Okay, today I'm going to make Grandma's goulash. Got a frying pan here. Put some oil in it, just like that. You need a spatula. Put the oil on turn the knob halfway around, so don't put it on high heat, put it on halfway on your stove. While the oil's heating up, I'll chop up onions. 2 onions you need. Just peel them. That's 1. 2. Got to chop all this up into fine pieces. Don't want any of that brown stuff in there, so make sure you get it off the board. Sorry about that, my eyes are just watering a little bit. Don't take a break for a minute. I think it's very strong on your eyes. Alright, now you've got your onion done. It's chopped up like this. I'll just take this over, put in the frying pan. Just got them on the stove at the moment. Just got to keep on stirring them until they're nice and golden brown. And while that's cooking, I've got a 500 gram piece of meat here I'm going to cut up for my goulash. I'll cut the fat off it. You can use a 400 to 500 gram piece of meat will be good. Just got to cut it up in small squares, just like this. I'll just grab a small plate out for it while I'm cutting it up in the squares, just like that, nice and not too small but not too big. Also you've got to trim up the meat, the pieces off it. While the onion's cooking, I'll just give it a stir around. come along nicely. Just continue on with the squares like this while the onion's slowly cooking. I'll wait till that browns up before I put the meat in, so they'll be probably in about 3 minutes time. The meat will be ready to go in, and I'll set you up and show you that once I've done this. Just keep them in small squares, don't make the meat too small, because when you go to cook it, if it's really small or dry out. This is rump steak, this piece of meat, so that's what you need to use, rump steak, or you could use stewing steak if you wanted to. The rump seems to be the best for it. Once you've got your meat cut up, that's the meat I just diced up there. Once you've got that done, onions are cooking on well. I'll move the meat aside. Now I've got my beef stock powder here, which is this one. You need the beef stock powder. You're going to need some ground cayenne pepper. You're going to need some paprika ground, and you're going to need a tin to mix it up, and you're going to also need some corn flour. So with these ingredients, got a spoon here. So you're going to need 15 grams of corn flour, which is one of these spoons. That's for your corn flour. You're going to need one of these. You're going to need 15 grams of beef stock. It's one of these beef stock, just like that. You're going to need 10 grams of paprika ground. That's 10 grams of that. And you're going to also need your cayenne pepper, which I always just put on a spoon because it's very hot. This, you only want to measure it out, put about that much, and as it's cooking you can adjust the cayenne pepper to however you want it. So if you want it a bit hotter, you can make it a bit hotter. Just don't go putting too much in there too quick. And then you shake it up and mix it all up in the can like that. And while your onions, I'm still stirring my onions at the moment. You're going to need a cup. You're going to need to fill that cup up to about 3/4, like that. You're going to need a long handled spoon. So you can, what you've just shaken up in the can, so you can mix this up in water, just like this. Just adding it into it, shaking it straight out of the can. can's only solely used for mixing the ingredients, your corn flour and the beef stock powder and your paprika and your cayenne pepper. That's only the purpose that you're using that extra tin for, to mix all the ingredients up until you got this, because this is going to be your sauce mix for when you add the meat, which I've got here ready to go in the frying pan. And once I get that set up on the stove, I'll bring you back and show you the next step. Alright, I've got you back over to the stove. The next step is get our nicely diced meat, what we just cut up. We put that in, like that. And all we want to do is, you don't actually cook the meat, we just want to make it tanned up on the outside, so brown it all up, so it's not raw. And whenever after you finish your meat plate and stuff, you want to make sure you wash your plate straight off from the meat juices, the excess and stuff off it, so it's easy to clean after. I've got the heat on halfway, so on your stove the dial's set in half. So you know, you got on your dial you got a quarter, half, 3/4 and high. Well, it's set on halfway at the moment because I've got to get it up, got to get the temperature up a bit to brown the meat. Like this, nice and brown. While that's still browning up, make sure you got your cup ready, which I've already mixed up. What you guys already seen earlier, what I've already done. Just make sure you keep this mixing nice, because I'm going to dump that straight in a minute. I'll sit that cup over here. Alright, now your meat's just, you can just see it, it's all browned up, just right. You don't want to cook it no more than that now. You want to keep the heat up. You've got a cup of water here. It'll be 250 mils of water in here, in this cup. And after you've done that, once you see it like this, you want to make sure that you put another quarter, so probably 300 mils of water in total, because this will evaporate over the next hour and a half of cooking. You want to just carefully swish this around as soon as you put it in there, because this is going to start thickening up with the corn flour and the heat. Once the heat gets to it, it's going to start thickening it all up. So you want to gradually move it around now and start stirring it carefully. Obviously you don't want to get anything everywhere. You want to keep it in the pan, but while it's still running like this, just stir it around so it doesn't, you don't get like the consistency, you end up getting thick on one side and be a bit watery on the other side, and it won't be all mixed together properly, all uniform. So you just want to keep it on the heat, keep it mixed around like this. I've got the heat still on halfway at the moment. The heat's hasn't, I haven't taken it down yet, because you've got to keep the heat up until it starts bubbling, and then we'll turn the plate down as low as it can possibly go, and then we'll leave it cooking for the next hour and a half. So that's how long it's going to take to cook this. So you've got to prepare this well in advance for tea time. And you can't have the stove plate up too high either, because you don't want it bubbling too much. Like as soon as you see some bubbles, that's when we'll turn it down. So when we get to that stage, I can see some steam coming off it already now, where the water's, what we've just put in there, it's heating up. So we just need to keep on swishing it around carefully. you can't rush this process, you've got to take your time. The longer you take to cook the meat and let it simmer, the better the quality of the meal will be. So the faster you try and cook it, the less, like, you know, the quality is not going to be very good. It'll be a poor quality. But you'll be cooking it so fast it'll dry the meat out that much, it'll be like cardboard. Now you can see it starting to bubble a little bit now. When you see it to bubble like this, we're going to turn the plate down on low straight away. We're going to turn the plate right back on low. And we're going to keep on swishing it too, because you can see the consistency, how it's starting to thicken up now. It's not as runny. It's not swishing around, slopping around like it was, you know, a minute ago or two. And I'll keep on doing that for the next 5 minutes, and I'll watch it and leave it on low. And every probably, like, now I've got it on low, you can see the consistency, how it's thickened itself up. Like, you can see that consistency in there now, like how it's not as runny as it was. It's starting to take its shape in it. And I've already slowed the cooking process down. We're going to leave it like this for an hour and a half to simmer. And while I'm waiting for this to cook, I've got the plate on low, and you've got to make sure you keep an eye on this and watch it all the time, because this will end up drying up the liquid in it, and you have to add a little bit of water through it. And after halfway through the cooking, you can taste the sauce and see what it's like. And if you want a little bit more hotter, you can put a bit more of that cayenne in it. So you've got your cayenne here, the ground cayenne pepper. If you want this a little bit more spicier, hotter, you can put a little bit more of that in it. And if you want to make the dish a bit more saltier, you can put a bit more stock powder beef. But only way you can add more to it, like as the spice, the ground cayenne pepper, that you can add this by sprinkling this over the meat and getting your spatula and mixing it all around in there, like just by sprinkling a very small amount over, because this is very strong. It'll end up burning your mouth out if you put too much in, and you won't be able to eat the meal. So you'll ruin it if you put too much cayenne in it. So you want to taste it and as you go. And if you want to add a bit more beef stock powder, you have to get a cup and some water and mix it up beforehand. And once you do that, you'll be able to mix it and stir it around so it's a liquid water, and you'll be able to spread it around there, and then you'll be able to swish it around in the pan and make it add to all the contents all over it, and then that'll be good. So the next step is, after we've done that, now is I'll get the pot ready. You need a pot like this, and I'll fill this up 3/4 full of water. Fill the pot up with 3/4 full of water, and in about probably, I'd say an hour's time, I'll come back and I'll turn the hot water on. I've got this on low, because this is going to take an hour and a half to cook from start to finish. So I'll put the noodles on in an hour's time, and they'll take half an hour to cook. I'll get the water boiling, which you got to get the water boiling. I've got my pot of water here ready, already pre in advance, and I've got the salt here, because you have to put some salt in the water. And you got to, when you boil the noodles, you put the salt in there. You always got to use salt when you're putting it in the noodles. And I've got myself a bag of these spirals. I like to use these spirals. These are very nice noodles. And when I get to that stage, I'll bring these back. I'll just give you a little look at this. It's already starting to take shape now, and it smells absolutely delicious. So once I get the noodles on, I'll bring these back, because this is just going to be the same thing for the next hour, just on low, and I'm just going to swish it around like this. That's all I'm doing, and that's it. Like, you don't have to do anything to it, and just keep an eye on the water, the fluid content in the pan, because once it, like, you know, as you can see, if you look at it real carefully, you can see that steam evaporating. That's actually the liquid evaporating from it. It's going to turn into a thick, like, sort of paste. You don't want it too thick, but you don't want it too thin. So you got to be easy on the water too, because otherwise you make your dish too runny if you put too much water in it. So it's all you just got to do it as you go and take your time, and yeah, just keep on swishing it like this, and yeah, I'll bring this back once I've got the water on. Okay, so an hour's gone by, and the goulash has been sizzling nicely on very low heat. As you can see, it's a nice thick consistency now. Now I've got the water on here, 3/4 of a pot, ready for the noodles. I've got some anodised table salt. I'm going to put probably about 5 pinches of salt in there. Don't put too much in there because it'll make the water way too salty. You only just need a little bit of salt in the water. That just stops the noodles from all sticking together. That's the only reason why you use salt. And once the water heats up a bit more, I'll get ready to put my noodles in. This goulash mix here, Grandma's goulash mix, that's going to take probably about another half an hour or more. Yeah. So once the water gets hot enough, I'll bring this back. Okay, I've got my water. It's been 5 minutes later, so we're an hour into cooking the goulash, an hour and 5 minutes actually to be exact. And I've got my water here, and it's up to boil. I've got my bag of noodles. I've already put my salt in the water too, as you've seen, five spoonfuls of salt. Just get 3/4 of a bag of noodles into hot water. And you want to stir them too a bit. So I'm making enough here for 2 adult meals. If you wanted to make a meal, look, you could make this meal for 2 adults and 2 kids, because kids will need a real lot, but you know, 2 adults you always put quite a few noodles on. It's always better to have extra noodles and not enough. So you know, a good 3/4 of the bag of noodles. And when you're cooking the noodles, you want to make sure you stir them regularly and keep an eye on it. Never leave the noodles unattended, because this water, if you go away for 2 or 3 minutes and it starts bubbling, it can end up overflowing everywhere on your stove. So you need to make sure I've got the noodles up on high, on, you know, the hot plate's 3/4 turned up on the dial to nearly as high as heat you possibly go, because that's how you got to cook noodles. And the goulash, that's only on low. It's just simmering, very slowly cooking on very low heat. And that's all you got to do. Just stir your noodles, keep an eye on them, and they'll take half an hour to cook, like this. As you can see, just got to stir them around. And the only reason I'm stirring around that, because if you don't stir them around, you just drop them in there and you boil the water, because the water's already hot. They'll actually stick to the bottom and they'll start burning. So that's the idea of stirring them around. And you'll watch them swell up. And I've got my goulash mix here. I've got that on low. I've been just stirring that very carefully and taking my time, turning that over and mixing it around. And another thing too is when you're cooking on the stove with pans and hot water and stuff, if you've got children around, be very careful, because hot water can burn children very easy. So you've got to be very careful and mindful if you've got kids around the stove when you're cooking at tea time and that, because otherwise they could burn themselves, because hot water is very hot. And also, even though the frying pan's on low, it's on low heat, it can still burn you. So just keep that in mind for if you've got kids around near the stove and that. Make sure you keep them well away, and you don't have to worry about them burning themselves. Once the noodles start cooking a bit more, I'll bring yours back. You can actually see them now. They've started to swell up already a little bit from where they were. Get your noodle and show. Just from being in the water, that's the size of the noodle. They're already starting to, you know, expand a little bit already once they start getting going a little bit. And just, yeah, keep on stirring it. And once they cook a bit, because they'll be half an hour on the noodles, they'll be another 25 minutes yet before the noodles will be cooked. And once they're nearly cooked, I'll bring you back and I'll show you how to tell if your noodles, your pasta's cooked or not, or your noodles, you want to call them, or pasta, whatever. And yeah, once that's done, I'll be back. This is what you got to be careful when you're cooking pasta. See if you go away from the stove and you leave it untended. See how it's foaming up. The best way to do that, if it does this, is take it, put it half off the heat, and you can turn your plate down to 3/4, or you know what I mean, until it settles down. Or you just hang your plate off if you want to leave it up in 3/4. Just hang your pot off the stove, not plate. Sorry, pot. Put your pot 3/4 off the plate, or half off the plate, and that way you can stop that from boiling over. Because you don't want to make a big mess everywhere. Even though you can, you know, I've only got a stand stove here, but you got a tray underneath the plate where if it does boil over, you can just clean it out afterwards. But you don't want to go making a mess if you don't have to. So you should always, whenever you got stuff cooked on the stove, make sure you're always there watching it, because you just don't know. That's another little tip. While it's cooked, and I'll bring you back when they're nearly cooked. I've had these noodles on now for 25 minutes, 27 minutes, and you can see they're starting to swell up, and they're almost cooked. Only need another probably 3 minutes, if that. And what I normally do is to test the noodles before taking them, like, you know, taking them off the plate, out of the pot. I'll get a cup, just drop my noodle in, I'll grab a cup, always grab a plastic cup, I do, and I'll grab a large spoon, and I'll take about, I don't know, probably about 7 or 8 noodles out, and what I'll do is I'll keep them stirring because they come along nicely. I need a little bit more water. I'll add a bit more water, and what I'll do is I'll add some water to these like this to test them, and I'll put them through a strainer like this. And I've just tasted them, and they taste pretty good. They just need probably 2 minutes, and they'll be ready to come out. You don't ever take your noodles off, or pasta people call it. You don't ever take them off out of the hot water and drain them or anything before you taste them, because you want to make sure they're cooked properly. A lot of people make a mistake cooking the pasta and it's not cooked properly and it tastes funny, or you always got to taste test things before you take them off. In 2 minutes, I'll bring you back when I'm about to drain them out, and I'll show you how to drain them properly. I've got the goulash mix here, Grandma's goulash mix, and I've been stirring. As you can see, that is cooked absolutely beautiful on low heat for an hour and a half. It's been an hour and a half has passed by. You don't want to go adding any water to it, because I put 500 mils of water in it. That's how much I started with, 500 mils, and that's all you need. If you want a little bit more runny, you could, but I'd prefer to have a little bit thicker like this. And yeah, that's it. 500 mils of water for the sauce. What I already pre-made out. I haven't had any water to it over the last hour and a half. And yeah, I'll bring you back when I'll take the noodles out, and I'll show you how I'll do that. Alright, I've just got my noodles off the plate. They're all cooked. I'll give you a look at them. They're nice and expanded. Now, the way I drain them is you need a drainer like this. You need a jug of water. I use purified water. First of all, I put some water in the pot, like as you see. And then I'll bring them over to the sink. And I'll tip them straight in the strainer. Tip them straight in there like that, and I'll get the jug, the water purified jug of water, and I'll shake the noodles around in the strainer. Rock it back, and I'll put some more water to wash them all out, and also it'll cool them down, stop them from cooking anymore. And I'll leave that like that, and I'll get a bowl. I'll set it back over this pot, just like that. And I'll get the plate ready and the ready to dish up. I'll bring you back when I've got that done. Put the noodles on, just like that. You're going to also need a spatula. Got the meat off the stove. And this is what the spatula's for. You scrape out the pan with it. Get all them lovely juices out and stuff that you've cooked with. Then, to top it off, some nice fresh parsley out of the garden. And there's your nice goulash meal, cooked from start to finish. And thanks for watching.